Aha. And yet another video in this topic. The previous video we talked about, getting hired, becoming a cop. Now we're on the job. On the job, cop. If this will get going. Aha. Have you guys ever seen Reno? So, you've been hired. You've gone through the academy. You've done your field training. You're off probation. And now you're working. A little something called reality shock. So what happens is you start this job. It's kind of like that with any job. Like any job you start that you've never done before, you sort of have these expectations going in, right? Think about maybe when you were a waitress or a waiter or whatever job you're doing now. I mean, even with being a professor, there's a little bit of reality shock. I had certain ideas of being a professor, and then, when I first thought about becoming a professor, I was like, oh, dude, that's got to be such a stressless job. All you do is you just read articles that you like, and you teach a subject that you like, and all this stuff, and it's so easy. Yeah, right. Then you start the job, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do advising. I have to, every time I want to travel somewhere, I have to fill out a whole thing of the forms. I have to publish a lot in order to keep my job. And then, I'll have summers off. You know what people do over the summer when they're not getting paid, by the way? Research. Now, you can apply for grants, but grants are difficult to get. Not everyone gets them. I've been lucky enough to get some. But they're not something that you can just get. But the same with policing. And actually, not the same, sorry. More so with policing is the reality shock. Many officers, when they start out, they're like, I'm going to be a superhero. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to get puppies out of trees. I'm going to protect society. And then they get on the job and the people they interact with are horrible. People don't call the police. Do you ever call the police to be like, hey, officer, guess what? Today, my girlfriend and I got along really well. I took her on a date, and she had the Pinot Grigio. I had a beer, and we had a really good time. It was a really good time, and we just wanted to call you and let you know that we are just very peaceful tonight. We're probably gonna sit down, watch a little bit of House of Cards, maybe The Ranch. We're kind of feeling like a comedy anyways, but we kind of do need to still finish House of Cards because everyone's talking about it. But The Ranch has been pretty good. Do you ever call the cops for that? No. You call the cops when things are bad, when there's bad news bananas on the streets. So the police officers do not interact with people at their best. Police officers interact with people when they're crunk, when they're dirty drunk, and they are angry, or when they maybe have mental illness and have done some drugs, or maybe they smoke just a tad bit too much K2, or they're high on meth, or they're slumped over in their car because they OD'd on heroin with their kid in the back seat. Or when you ask someone a question and they're like, I don't have to answer you. Yeah, but I was just asking you a question, man. So they hit this reality shock of, whoa, people do not like me. And it's not because majority of people don't like them. In fact, the majority of people in the United States like police officers. Actually, a vast majority of people in the United States like police officers. But because of the nature of their job, the police officers seldom interact with those people. They interact with them, when they are a victim or when their car broke down. But when they're getting called, they're interacting with the people who are having a rough day, the people who don't like them, people who didn't necessarily call them, but the cops were called on them. So they get hostility, they feel stereotyped. They're peeling the dead people off the ground. They have to see dead children. They have to see drunk people. They have to see people who they've seen several times in 1 week kill themselves with a drug. How must that feel? How do you think seeing that on a regular basis, how is that going to impact the way you feel about your job or about life in general? If you speak to many police officers, they feel like the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And it might be. And then you see your friends get in trouble for things that you don't think is a big deal. You think management's out to get you. Everyone is out to get you. Police officers are between a rock and a hard place. That's what happens to many police officers when they begin working. All right. That was kind of a bummer. But seriously, though, you guys should get your degrees and become police officers because we need more police officers like yourselves. So, okay. So now you've been hired. You know where you start when you're a police officer? No matter where you go. You can go anywhere you want. You're not going to become a detective right out of the bat, BT dubs. I know some of you think that. I know some of you right now are like, what? You just rocked my world, Cohen. Yeah, I did. Excuse my energy. I've had a lot of coffee. You don't just become a detective right out of the bat. You start on patrol. And a lot of people don't like patrol. A lot of people are like, oh, come on. I got to deal with these assholes on the street all the time. I don't get a good schedule. And guess what? Newer officers get the crappier shifts. Second shift usually starts around middle of the day and it goes until about midnight. That's when you see most of the crap go down because that's when kids get out of school. That's when people have scored whatever drugs they're about to pump up in their veins and start acting like fools. And third shift sucks because it's boring and it's at night. When all your friends are out partying at the bar, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're working. And the older officers who did not make it up through the ranks, the older officers who did not become sergeants, who did not become detectives, who did not become administrators, who stayed in patrol, the very experienced patrol officers are put on first shift. Yeah, I mean, first shift starts it usually starts in the morning, like 6, 7, maybe 8, I don't know. That's when first shift starts, and it ends at 2, 3 in the afternoon. That's pretty much how I work when I teach in the fall. In the fall, I like to start teaching my classes early and be done by like 2 or 3 so I can go home and deal with my dog and still have some daylight. That is the money shift. Because not only don't you have to deal with nothing, or not nothing, look, I mean, you're going to deal with things, but life is a little easier on the streets during those hours, during regular business hours, right? So things are easy. You're working when everyone else is working, so you can have a pretty good family life still. The seniority system. You know what's wrong with it? Is that the officers that have the most experience and the most insight are wasted on soccer dad who has a flat tire and needs an officer parked behind him while he changes his tire. That's one of my biggest qualms with the seniority system. But I get it. I mean, we get that in academia as well. You go just go look at all of the professors, or not all, but look at your schedule over the time you've been in college, okay? Look at your schedule through the time that you've been in college. Look at every semester schedule that you've had. Look at those schedules. Look at all the professors who taught at your favorite times or who taught on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Look at those professors and then go look them up on the website and see whether their title is associate or assistant professor. I bet you I bet you that the majority of people you're going to see are associate professors. They are tenured professors. Professors who are associate or full are tenured. They get the sweetest schedules because they have seniority. You give the sweet schedules to the people who've earned it. Now you're a cop, you're new, you've been put on second or third shift, probably third shift, and now you want to become a detective. Well, you have to spend at least 3 to 5 years on patrol before you can even apply. And the reason why they do that is in order to eliminate favoritism, because I might become friends with someone that's high up at a police agency and then, become a patrol officer for like 6 months. I take the exam for detective or I take the sergeant exam and boom, all of a sudden I'm hired. No. People you take a test, and once you hit that 3 or 5 year mark, depending on the department you're on, you are then accepted to become a detective or a sergeant. And then once you're a sergeant, you can apply. Now, one thing that's also kind of funny, so let's say you go from patrol to detective, and now as a detective you take the sergeant test, but you really want to become an investigation sergeant. If you get that sergeant position, they're going to put you back in patrol as a patrol sergeant, and then you're going to have to move your way back into detective sergeant. Same thing with lieutenant and all those other things. Herbert said that the police, their behavior is very much confined by the law. And that's very important. The law says when you may shoot. The law says when you may arrest. The law says when you can do X and when you can do Y and when you can do Z. Officers don't, despite the fact that they have lots of discretion, they don't have unlimited discretion. They are controlled to some degree by bureaucracy. And we've discussed that last topic. Their departmental rules and regulations control their behavior to some extent. Police officers also value more active and aggressive police work. So where Mr. Community Policing is going to be viewed kind of like a punk, most of people who adhere to the police subcultural values will have more respect for Officer Badass, Officer Crime Fighter, as opposed to Officer Community Safety. I also don't think I have ever met a police officer that does not care about their own safety. Policing is very precarious. Most of the time you deal with a car stop and there's nothing wrong. Right? The person gives you their ID, they cooperate, they don't shoot you in the face. But sometimes that happens, and it scares the crap out of you. Sometimes somebody just all of a sudden loses their mind. Sometimes someone's on drugs, and they start coming down, or they start getting higher on it. And then your safety is in question. Sometimes somebody points a black object at you, and you don't know whether it's a cell phone or a gun. And you don't know whether to reach for your gun or for your taser. And at the same time, you don't want to end up on YouTube. What do? Officer safety is a huge thing. I'd say that's probably one of the most important things that they value. Also, never say good luck to a police officer. You always say stay safe out there to them. FYI. So remember that. Because good luck implies that they don't have as much control. Officers also value competence. And I can definitely attest to that. I have seen that so many times in my research. My line of research is qualitative, which means I get to know the police officers kind of well. I get to know the police officers better than someone who just hands out a survey would. Now, I don't get to know the police officers like on a super personal level, but I get to know them well enough to see which ones are the competent ones and which ones are the ones that are not that effective or not that efficient. And you definitely get a sense of how officers view those less efficient ones. It's not in a good light. Also, the police see the public as either good or bad. There's no neutral. There's no gray zone. No. You know who operate in the gray zone? The police do. The police will view the citizens as either good or bad. But almost every police officer will tell you that they have to operate in the gray zone. They have to make those hard decisions. It's interesting that your view of the people you deal with is either black or white, but then your own view is gray. Or the view of your own personal view of what you do and what your morals are is more gray. I had another officer who said, and this was in Maryland, who said you get yes people and you get no people. You get the people who want to cooperate and the people who don't want to cooperate. So what types of career development? So now you're a police officer, you know, and that's one thing when I was in college and I wanted to become a police officer. You think sort of once you're in your uniform, that's it. You've reached your goal. But there's much more to do after you become a police officer. Because of the time rank system, that's something you have to nail into your head. Time rank system. That's the thing where you have to wait 3 to 5 years before you can rank up to out of patrol. If you want to become a sergeant, become a detective, become a this, become a that, that's where you do that. So there's really two major things that we need to pay attention to here. So, by the way, the term career development means when you develop what you do in your career. All right? You use your talents to focus on particular areas. So, promotion is different from assignments. You can be a patrol, you can be an officer or a private first class, but you can have social media officer assignment. You can be a private first class but be an FTO. You can be a private first class and be in SWAT. You can be a private first class and be a detective. You can also be a sergeant and be in the IT unit. You can be a sergeant and be an FTO. You can be a sergeant and be in SWAT. SWAT. You can be a sergeant, lieutenant. So rank is literally just your rank. Who do you have authority over? Who's going to call you sir? And who do you call sir or ma'am? So what are some sources of job satisfaction for the brolies? The nature of police work. You get to work with people. You get to serve the community. I mean, I'm not a police officer, but I've been on ride-alongs where we went to some pretty high-intensity situations, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see what happens. It's exciting to see an officer talk to another person and get information out of them. And then you go to where they got that information, and they just arrested someone else, too. It's exciting. It's not as boring as my job where I have to grade papers that are written. They're written. They're papers that are written. Not necessarily Pulitzer Prize winning papers, but they're papers, and I have to read them, and then I have to grade them. And then I'd say about 30% of the time, I have to engage in an argument with the student as to why I gave them the grade I gave them, and explain to them in further detail why I gave them that grade. That's the excitement of my job. You know, it's pretty much just as exciting as figuring out where the big K2 house is in the in the jurisdiction, right? Sometimes when officers do a really good job, they're rewarded for it. The police chief will say, "Hey, Officer Cohen, good job busting that criminal the other day," or whatever. Or, "Hey, I saw that video of you using force. You did a really good job using an appropriate amount of force there. Very good." And when opportunities open up for advancement, when there is training opportunities, those things, they enjoy those things. When citizens actually work with the police, it's very uplifting for them. When they ask someone to sit down and just wait while they run their stuff and you listen, they appreciate that. Or when citizens are honest with them, they appreciate it. If you get pulled over and you were kind of speeding, just say, "Yes, officer, I'm sorry." I don't guarantee you, but I'll tell you about 50% of the time, they'll let you go. They'll just be like, "Next time, watch out." Policing also comes with a whole bag of stress. A lot of studies show that police officers are more likely to kill themselves. They are more likely to become alcoholics. And they have a higher rate of dying by heart attack. These are all stress-related things. But it makes sense, right? You are in fear of your life a lot of times. You have to work weird hours. You don't have many friends who understand exactly what you're doing unless they're also police officers. So you're surrounding yourself by other people who have similar problems. You see things that you can never unsee as a police officer. You see tragedy a lot. And then you're just supposed to go about your day. Officers have a higher rate of divorce. Now, even though officers are scientifically less likely to die in the line of duty, compared to fishermen and farmers and loggers, which, by the way, those are all very dangerous professions. There's still that threat of danger. It's that precariousness, right? With fishing and with farming and logging, you're like, okay, well, a tree's going to fall on me. I'm going to die. You know that's going to happen. That's something you have a little bit more control over avoiding. But when you're dealing with human beings, even though it might not happen that much, it's still the perceived danger. The perceived uncertainty is still higher. And so officers are stressed. Then you get citizen disrespect. There's nothing, again, and again, I'm just a professor, but when you have a rough day teaching, students are just giving you a bunch of especially on those days when you create an assignment that you wanted to innovate with, and you just made a bad decision with the assignment. Like every professor has done that, whether they admit it or not. You create like maybe a paper, like a final paper or a final project, because you think, and you make it kind of difficult, but you think the students are gonna like it because it's different, and then they all hate it. And they all think it's so unfair. And you get like 30 emails in one day complaining. People are dropping your class. It's demoralizing. And so when officers are just wanting people to cooperate and they get this disrespect, or when someone screams in their face about something, and so when you're still processing those traumatic events, those events where you saw something that you can never unsee, and now someone is screaming at you, saying you're this POS, you're worthless, you have no morals, how must that make you feel? It's got to be quite stressful. All right. I will see you guys next time.